In this video, I'm going to be going over the basics of Tailwind, how to set it up, and how to actually start using it in your own project. And it does have a very big library, so of course I didn't go over all of the properties here and the values, but you can always come here and find whatever you need to. But before we get started, make sure to leave a like, subscribe so you don't miss upcoming videos. Comment down below if you want me to make a video on a specific thing in Tailwind. But now, let's get started. So here I've created a basic React project called Tailwind, and if we actually open it, we can see that there's absolutely nothing here, just the basic template that React gives us. But if we go to tailwindcss.com and press on get started, here we're going to have 4 ways to install it, and the first one's going to be the best way because we're going to be actually installing it. But if you don't want to install it yet, you can go to play CDN, and here you're going to be using a link just like Bootstrap and other tools. And all you have to do is copy the script and paste it in the head and probably something else, but we're not going to do that. So I'm going to go to installation and we're going to be actually installing it. So first thing that we have to do is write npm install Tailwind CSS. So I'm going to go back here, I'm going to open another terminal, paste that in there and press on enter. Now we're going to go back and actually initialize it. So now we can press on enter. And now we're going to see a tailwind.config.js file inside of our project. But now if we scroll down in here, we can see that we have to configure it. So I'm actually going to paste this link, which is made for React. So we can see it says install Tailwind CSS with create React app. So this is what we need. And we have both of these steps done. So if we go to step 3, we can configure it now. And it says that we have to add paths, to add the paths to all of our template inside of the config file. So I'm going to copy the content and swap that with the content that we currently have in here. So paste that in here, and we don't actually have TypeScript, but we can keep it in here in case we do add TypeScript later on inside of our React project in here. And so the next step is going to be adding it to our CSS. You don't have to do this, but it's going to help you customize it a lot more. So if we go to index.css and paste that at the very top, we've added Tailwind to our CSS files, and now we have to run our project again. So I'm going to go back here, stop it, and run it again. And so there it is. I'm going to close this one because we already have one running, and now we can copy this H1 and see if it works. So if I zoom in, we can see that the first class has something to do with size, so it should make it larger. It's going to make the font bold, and then we should have an underline. So if we go to app.js and then paste the H1 in here and go back in here, there's going to be our text. It's going to be bolded and also underlined, which means that we've successfully installed Tailwind. The first thing that I want to go over is going to be colors. So I'm going to scroll down to customization, go to colors, and there's going to be all the colors that we're going to be able to use, which is why I really like Tailwind because we have a lot of different options here. So I'm just going to start with random color. Let's do sky. So the way that it works is you're going to want to find an element with text. So this H1 is going to work really well. We're going to start with writing text and then the name of the color, which is going to be sky. And you've definitely noticed that we have different values here. So we have from 50 to 950. And so the smaller the values, the lighter the color. So 50 is going to be pretty much white, and then 950 is going to be the darkest shade that you're going to get of this color. So let's start in the middle. So 500. So text sky, and then we're going to use 500 and see what that looks like. So there's going to be this nice sky color. Now if we go to 50, we can see that it's going to be very light, and we're barely going to see it. And then we're going to have 950, which is going to be the darkest, and all the other ones are going to work. So 600 is going to work. It's going to be a bit darker than 500. Same goes for 400. That's going to be lighter than 500, but hopefully you get the point. And this works for any other colors. So let's say I wanted a nice slate color and I want it to be 500. We could do the same thing. So slate, and then change this to 500. And now it's going to be this nice gray color. Now a really nice thing that you could also do is set your own values. So if we scroll down here and go to tailwindconfig.js, we can add colors instead of themes and then add our own properties and values. So let's just say that in here, I wanted to add a custom one. So in themes, we would do right colors. And then I already have this nice suggestion, but I'm going to add my own. So let's just say I had a color called hello, just as an example. And so the actual color would be black. Let's see if that works. So if we go and change this to hello, go in here, we can see that it's going to be black, but that's the actual default color. But if we see here, we can see that now there's going to be this class called text hello, which is going to be black. But if we change this to white now, so white, we can see that the text is going to be white, and it also actually change it to white. So you can actually customize your own color. So let's say you had a main color and then that would be some sort of color. We would have to go back in here, change this to text main, and now it's going to be this nice white color, but we're not going to see it because obviously our background is white, which is what we're going to do next. Now that we know how we can change the text color, let's go ahead and learn how to change the background color. So I'm going to remove this colors from our theme because we don't need that anymore. And then I'm going to change this to sky and then 500 because I really like this color for some reason. But we're going to go back in here, and if we search up background color, we're going to find this page that's going to explain how to set the background color. It's going to be the exact same way, but just instead of text, it's going to be background. So in here, let's just say I want to set the background color to be slate 200, just as an example. We go back in here, and you can see that the background changed. So we can set this to 500. It's going to be a lot darker. We can change the text color now to be a lot lighter. So that's pretty much just going to be reversed. So that's pretty much how you can set the background color of any element, and it's going to work on everything. So that's pretty much it. But now I want to go over containers because they're going to be pretty important. So if we take a look here, we're going to have different sizes and properties here. But if we scroll down, we're going to see an example of what it would look like. So class of container, and we're going to be setting margin left and right to be auto to center it. So let's go back in here. I'm going to make a div with a class name of container. I'm going to put the h1 inside of it, and let's just see what that would look like now. So if we go back here, I'm going to zoom out. We can see that it's not centered, which is why we need to add the class of mx auto. And if we go back again, we can see that it's going to be centered. We have to also center the text, so we have to write text center. And now that we actually have a container, we can set the background of the container to be equal to something. So background slate 500. Let's see what that would look like. So it looks the same, but now if we add another element, so paragraph, let's just say hello world, we can see that the background is going to work. But a really cool thing about this is that it's going to be pretty responsive. So if we inspect this, we can see that the container, it's going to stay like this until we go mobile, and then it's not going to get smaller. So that's a pretty nice thing about this container. So it's pretty responsive, and we have different sizes, and we can also add padding here. So let's go ahead and do that. So in here, let's write px of 4, which shouldn't really do much because it's going to be centered. So we can change this to y, and now we're going to have padding top and bottom. But now let's go over displays real quick. So display, it's pretty self-explanatory. So we have block and inline, and you just write block or inline block. So let's say this is going to be an h1, so we can write inline block. And now if we go back in here and inspect this, we can see it's going to be an inline block. So if we have a paragraph under, and then we could just say paragraph, and also add a class here of inline block, and then let's just set the text to be also sky 200. And now if we go back, we can see that they're going to be beside each other since they're both going to have a display of inline block, and everything else works the exact same way. Another thing you can do is, let's say if we write hidden, we can see that the element's not going to be there, but if we do something like sm hidden, it's going to only show this element when the width is going to be small, or we can change this to, let's say, medium, and then it's going to appear here. So there's all different ways in which you can use this, but this is just going to be a pretty small example. So all the displays are going to be in here, and most you're probably going to use is going to be grid, flex, block, inline block, and then also inline. So that's how you write them. Now spacing is to be the next one. So we still have this hello world with a paragraph. I put it back to inline block. So here in padding, we have our px and py, which is what we did. And then so here we have our padding top, right, bottom, and then left. And here's how we can set the padding to 1 pixel. So px, which is going to be pixels, and then px and py. So padding left and right to be 1 pixels and so on. But the point here is that we can set the padding. So in here, we already have a padding of y. So if I open this, we have py of 4. But if we go to, let's say, the paragraph here, we can add a padding x of, let's just say 4 2, and now we're going to have space between here. And then if we set this to left, it's going to look the exact same because now we just added padding left instead of left and right, but hopefully you get the point. We can also do margins. So if we set this to ml, it's going to work the exact same way, but just margin instead of padding. And this is going to be pretty much padding and margin. So we can see that it's the exact same thing, but we have to change the p with m depending on what you want to do. And the values that we can use are going to be 0.5, 1, 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. But if we go to the very bottom, we have also auto here, which is what we used, and then we also have this 96. So let's just see what that looks like, just as a reference. So if we go in here, margin left 96, now we can see that they're going to be pretty much just both in the other ends. So that's pretty cool. Now we have width and then also height over here, which is going to be pretty much the same thing, but just than height. But here we're going to have different sizes, so width and then all of these guys. But we also have fractions in here, so 6/12, that's going to be 50%, and then all the other ones. So if we scroll down here, we can see the different widths here. So let's say that we had two divs here under that. So we had a div and we wanted to set the width of this div to be, let's say 40. So 40 would be somewhere here. So let's actually do 48 and 48. So this would be W48, not 47, 48. I'm going to copy and paste this. Here, let's just say we had paragraph. Here, let's just say we had random text, and same thing in this right here. So lorem. Now if we go back here, this is what it's going to look like. So we can see that the width is going to be 12 rem, and we do need to kind of put them together. And so I'm actually going to remove this paragraph because we don't really need it anymore. And let's just add the inline block to both of these elements now. So inline block and inline block, and there it is. I'm going to remove the inline block from the H1. So there it is. And now we're going to have both of our divs kind of like two sections here. We can change the text color if you wanted to. So let's just go to the H1 and add a margin bottom of 4, just so that it looks a bit nicer. There it is. And so we can change them and make them smaller. So let's see what the other size is. We have 40. So let's see what 40 would look like from 48. It's going to be 40. So it should be smaller. There we go. We can see that they're going to be smaller. Let's change them to 64. So that should be good enough. So this is kind of one way to make a grid without actually using a display grid. So we can see that that works and it actually looks pretty nice. We can also add padding if we wanted to. So let's just say padding of 4. So there it is. Let's just do 2, and then let's set the text to be sky 200, and then I'm going to copy this, paste it in here. So there we go. And then we can also set the text outline, so text left in here, just like we use text center there, but in here, and then we're going to use text right here just to see what that would look like. So there it is, text left and then text right, which will change the alignment, and I'm not really sure why I have it like this, but there we go. So there's going to be our small container. But now something very important we could do is setting the actual height of our container to be 100 view height. So to do that, we're going to go to our container and write hscreen, which is just going to set it to 100 view height, and we can see it in here. So if we scroll down in here, hscreen is going to be height of 100 view height, and we can see it over here. So here's going to be our container. We can do the same thing for the width if we wanted to, but we have a container, so there's not much point. But as always, if you scroll down here, you can set your own classes. So we can do actually hfull, which is going to set the height to be, full or whatever. So let's just say in here, instead of 64, we can do full, just to see what that would look like. So go back in here, and now we're going to have full width, and that's one way to do that. You can do the same thing for height and so on, but hopefully you get the point of how to use sizing. And we have min, so it's the exact same thing, but instead of just writing h, we're going to have min before, and then also same goes for max. We're going to have max, so same goes for width. We're going to have max width and then min width. So it's pretty much all just the same thing, but just a bit different. And before moving to the cool stuff, I'm going to show you a few more useful properties. So we have font size, and we're going to start with text, just like with text color and so on. So we're going to start with extra small, go to small, and we have base, which is just going to be the default size, so 16 pixels, large, extra large, and we have 2XL to 9XL. So let's just see differences here. So we have our H1, which is going to be 3XL, so we can set that to 4XL. It's going to be a lot larger. I'm going to actually fully zoom out. So let's set this to 9XL and see how big that is. So that's huge. So I'm going to set this to 7. Now for this, what I'm going to do is, let's just say text 5XL and see if that's going to work. So it does work, but now we have to change the width a little. So I'm just going to move both of these properties here because we're not doing any widths anymore. So remove that, see what that looks like. So there it is. Same goes for here. So I'm going to actually change this to 4. And then this is going to be text 4XL, or let's actually do this, change that to 3 so that it's going to be smaller. And now that we have our font sizes changed, let's add a margin X of, let's just say 4, see what that would look like. So that looks nice. I'm going to do the exact same thing in here. So just like that. And let's also add a MY of 4. So that would be under, but hopefully get the point of how to set the text color. And now let's go back here and I'm going to scroll down to borders because border radius is going to be pretty useful. You're most likely going to be using this a few times. So we have the most used ones, which is going to be rounded, rounded medium, rounded large, and then rounded full. So let's just say here we also had a background of slate 400, just see what that would look like. So there it is. Let's make this darker, so like 600, and then let's add our rounded. So back here we just have rounded. Let's see what that will look like. So rounded. I'm going to copy this, paste it in here, and then change this one to medium. So this is going to be normal rounded. This one's going to be medium. And I'm actually just going to copy and paste these under. So we have rounded large. So this one is going to be rounded large. And then we have full, which is just going to be a full circle. I'm not really sure what that's going to look like on here, but there we go. So this one is going to be normal, medium, large, and circles. So if you have an image and you want it to be like a profile picture or something, then you can use the full on that, but we can see that doesn't look the best on normal text. So I'm going to remove this guy, and I'm going to go over one more thing. So we're going to go over border width and then just border in general. So let's just create a border real quick on one of them. Let's just say the first one, we're going to have a border with a width of 2. So border 2, let's see what that looks like. So there it is. Now we have to set the color, so that's going to be border, and then let's set it to the text color that we have, which is going to be sky 200. So there it is. Now we can also style it, so we have solid, dashed, and all the other ones, but just because I'm showing this anyway, let's use one of them. So let's do border double because this one looks pretty nice. So border double. So I don't know if we're going to be able to see it, but there it is. I'm going to make this border 4, so now it's going to be larger, and we can actually see that, but there it is. And there's going to be different borders obviously, but that's pretty much just the very basics. And the color is just going to be just like all the other colors that we have. So let's make this red maybe. So border red and maybe 400. So now it's going to be this light 400, but I'm just going to go back to sky 200 because that's the text color that we have. And let's actually just copy all of this, paste this one in here, and then let's add a style of border dotted. And paste this in here. We're going to have border dashed, and let's just do one more, which is going to be border solid. So this one is going to be solid. And now we're going to have all of our borders, and maybe we can add some padding here, margin. So margin Y4. We're going to be more spaced out in here, and now everything is going to look a lot nicer. But now let's move on to the actual cool stuff, which is going to be hover effects. So here we have a button with a background of sky 500, and on hover, so we can see we have hover, and then we're going to set the background to be sky 700, which is just going to be darker, and this is pretty much how it's going to work. So we have all of these other ones, and let's go ahead and actually make a button real quick. So at the very bottom here, let's make a button. So button, and so these are going to be the classes for our button. Let's see what that looks like. So there's going to be our nice button in here, and what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to change the font size to be 3XL, make it a lot larger, maybe even 4XL. So there's going to be the button, but when we hover we can see that nothing happens. So let's go ahead and actually add that class. So on hover, currently it's going to be 500, but we're going to change the background to be sky 700. So when we hover now, we can see that it's going to change to 700, and you can even change it to 600 if you think that's too much. So there it is. We can also change the text color if you wanted to. So let's just say that on hover, we want to set the text to be sky 700 too, which is not going to look too good, but let's change that to, let's say, sky 200. Not sure what that's going to do, but we can see that it's still changed. So we can do that kind of stuff. We can also add borders. So let's just say on hover, we're going to set our border to be 2. So it's going to actually add a border here. So we can see that there it is. And then we can change the color and so on, but we're not going to do too much stuff because it's obviously going to be too much for the user. So there it is. But now let's actually scroll down and see what other stuff we have here. So I scrolled a little bit down, and so we have our hover that we used. We have active, and then we also have focus. So let's try to copy the button here. So we have the colors violet 500. So this guy is going to change to violet 500. And then we have our hover. So on hover, we're going to change that to violet 600. So let's remove all of this. So on hover, we're going to do violet 600. And then on active, we're going to change the background be violet 700. So let's see what that does. So when we hover, we can see that it's going to be darker, which is going to be this guy. But then when we press on it and hold, we can see that the background is going to be even darker. But then when we release, we can see that it goes back to normal. So hover, and when we actually press on it, it's going to be darker. So let me actually show that. So I'm going to paste this in here, and I'm going to make this 900 so that you can see it a lot better. So here we have the button. When we hover it, it's going to turn darker. But then when we actually press it, it's going to be even darker. So we can do that, and then we actually have focus. So after we press it, or when we press it and after, so I'm just going to paste this in here. So now we can see that when we actually press the button, then it's going to be like this. So we can maybe on focus, we can keep the background at 600 so that it wouldn't go back to 500. So when we hover and then when we actually press it, it's going to turn darker, and when we leave, it's going to go back to that. So there's a lot of different ways in which we can use these, but these are just going to be very, very basic examples, and you can use them on pretty much any elements that you want. So let's just say we have our H1 over here and we wanted to add a hover effect. So just say on hover, we wanted to set the text to be sky 400, which is going to be a bit darker. So there's going to be the text, and when we hover it, we can see that it's going to be a bit darker, but since it's going to be an H1, then we can see that we can actually hover it here and then it's still going to work. So that's pretty much how this works, and you can do anything you want. So let's just say we want to change also the text size. So on hover, we can do cursor pointer. We can also do underline, so we can move the underline when we don't hover, and then let's also change the text color. So hover, and then let's just do text 9XL, which is going to be the biggest that it's going to get. But when we hover, now we can see that we changed the cursor, the color, and we also added the underline. And then when we leave, it's going to go back to the default styles. And before I end this video, let's go over grid and how to use it. So first we have to do is actually set the display property to grid. So let's actually put all of these divs inside of another div so that the H1 wouldn't really annoy us. So here we're going to have this div with all of these different divs and the buttons. Now this div is going to have a class name of grid, and let's just start by seeing what we can do. So this button, we can see that it's already going to have a width of 100. So let's go in here, and I'm going to set the MX to be auto, so that's going to be in the middle, and we can actually remove the 2XL because it's not really going to matter anymore. But see what we can actually do here. So we can start by setting the grid columns to be, currently we have 1, but let's set that to 2. So grid calls to be 2. Now we're going to have 2 columns. So there they are. And I'm pretty sure the font sizes here are going to be smaller, which is why it's not going to look too good. And also in here, we can see that we set the height to be 100 view height, but we can actually set the min height to be that. So now depending on the size, so let's just say that our text was, it's 4XL, but now if we change it to 9, we're going to have a lot more text, but now we can see that also our actual container stretches. So let's go ahead and change that too. So min height to be 100 view height. So there we go. I'm gonna move the button outside of that so that's gonna stay centered, and now we're gonna have all of this. But now let's see what 3 would look like, and now we're gonna have 3. Same goes for 4. So if we have 4 now, we're gonna have 4 columns now and then nothing under. So that's pretty much how you can manipulate everything, and then we could use subgrid and all of the other values. This is gonna be pretty much just the very basics of how to use grid. And so if you want me to make a video dedicated on one property or maybe a few properties, and make sure that you comment down below so that I know. But this is where I'm getting this video, so I really hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, then make sure to leave a like, subscribe so you don't miss upcoming videos, comment down again if you want to see a certain video, or if you have anything else you'd like to say, and hopefully see you in the next video.